Before we begin, I have a small ask of you. So there's nothing I hate more than when a keynote gets up at the front and literally has, you know those slides where it's literally just like piles and piles and piles of text? And I'm talking, but you're trying to read the slide, and you're like, okay, can you not, please? I'm like trying to read this encyclopedia of information you put on the screen while you're talking. It's very distracting. Have you guys ever seen that before? Have you ever been that person? Yeah, maybe a little bit. I have also been that person, and it actually prompted me to write this article for EdSurge about 4 years ago called Why Your Students Forgot Everything on Your PowerPoint Slides. So what I am hoping is that at the end of this, I won't have done that, but if you see that, please come up and let me know. The main story in this article, which by the way was the second most popular article that EdSurge has ever had in its entire existence, was basically that there's too much cognitive load happening in your mind when you're both trying to read and trying to listen at the same time. So please, 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 if any of that happens today, call me out on it. David sort of alluded to the fact that I love calling other people out, but I welcome the feedback as much. So please, dear God, do call me out if you see that. All right, so let's get started. You're not going to be sitting for too long. As any good educator knows, really sitting for more than 20 minutes is just not fun. So we are going to be getting up in a few moments. But before we do that, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. David mentioned that I have been an educator, and that is correct. I am an educator in a bit of a different capacity right now. But when I started out, I was a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math and science teacher. I taught in Houston, and then I taught in Los Angeles. Anybody from Texas here? Yeah, Texas, what up? Are you UT fans? Oh, okay. We'll just move past that awkwardly. Anybody from Los Angeles here? Yes, sir, ma'am. Good for you. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. You really had the shortest run if we're talking about it, like 4 hours away. Drive or fly? Drive. Good. Good for them. So I did spend a lot of time in the classroom, and I actually do sometimes still dress up as a science educator for children's birthday parties because I have a problem with letting go, truthfully. But these are some of my kids, and to this day, I still think that teaching is A, the hardest profession in existence, and B, the most important job that I have ever had and will ever have throughout the rest of my life. So I do want to give attention to that because teaching is oftentimes, I think, the best way to really learn about how to educate others, but then also just how to be an amazing human being in general. I also had the lucky fortune of being able to work on the Scratch team at MIT. For those of you who teach computer science or know about computer science, Scratch is a introductory computational thinking tool. Do any of you teach Scratch or use Scratch? It's so fun. I am obsessed with it. So I had the wonderful fortune to actually be able to create professional development for educators to help them understand how to integrate it into their classroom, which was a blast and truthfully one of the best experiences I've ever had. But while I was in the classroom, and some of you may know about this, I experienced something pretty interesting, which was when I saw a district school decide to reallocate funding away from arts programming to buy one-to-one iPads. And truthfully, it ended up not going very well. It ended up being a disaster. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way to learn and understand education technology than falling prey to the whims of being tempted by other schools going one-to-one and saying, oh, we should do that so we can keep up with the Joneses. So I joined EdSurge. And actually, to this day, I still write about education technology, professional development, implementing lots of interesting things in the classroom. This was actually a piece that I put out in October about having a STEM-themed Dia de los Muertos celebration. And to this day, I still feel that there is a lot of work and stories that go untold. And so if you are interested in writing a story for EdSurge, please let me know. I know some people. They love hearing from the folks doing the work like yourself. However, as a journalist, you tend to write a lot, but not actually be able to affect the work on the ground. And so I joined this small startup about a year and a half ago called Google. It's a tiny company out in the Silicon Valley. You may have heard of it. And I joined in a capacity, I think, a bit different from what people would think of when they think of a Google employee. I'm not an engineer, I'm not a product manager. I actually have the really quite inspiring opportunity to work on 2 education and equity programs, one of which is Code Next. So Code Next is a high school facing free computer science education program for Black and Latino Hispanic students. And essentially what it is a free after school program where kids come into real labs that we've created and they get a complete introduction to computer science making. They meet coaches that look like them, and they really get a full-scale preparation to be able to go into computer science as an industry later when they go to college and beyond. If you're curious and learning more, you can. g.co/codenext. It's a really wonderful program. We have physical in-person labs, 1 in the Bay and 2 in New York right now. So if you're interested in opening up a lab in your area, I am looking for new spaces to do this at some point. So keep that in mind. But I also have the opportunity to work on a higher education program, which is called Tech Exchange. This is similar to Code Next, but it's geared at college students, and it focuses on bringing students to the Google campus for their full junior year of college. Yes, they are literally studying abroad, if you will, but more studying domestically, on the Google campus and getting a crash course in the tech industry. And we have students specifically from HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, and then HSIs, Hispanic serving institutions. So I think we actually may have a few folks, New Mexico State is one of our partners. David, yes. We have a number of partners that we're working with, Morgan State, UT El Paso. El Paso, anybody? No? Okay. We have Howard, we have Prairie View A&M, University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez. And the thing I always like to say about this is the reality of why this works so well, I think, is all of the partnerships that we have. So those of you who are in higher education, partnerships between higher education organizations, K-12, and for-profit organizations like Google, I think is a huge part of what makes our work successful. All right, but enough about me. Now we're going to talk about you. I told you that you were going to get up, and I am not going to disappoint. So here's what's going to happen. The topic of my discussion today is, do we think that we are preparing students for the world of the future, for jobs in 2025 and beyond? Before we get to that, I want to level set and understand how you feel, how this room thinks that we are doing when it comes to educating the students of today. So, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to stand up, and I'm going to put statements up on the walls with a spectrum that goes from agree on this side all the way to disagree on that side. So what I'm going to ask you to do is go to the side of the room depending on where you agree or you disagree. You don't have to be binary about it, though. You can be kind of like, I'm sort of like a soft agree, I'm sort of like a nice brie cheese agree, or I'm sort of a nice disagree, not all the way. I don't want to be crazy, but I'm sort of in the middle a little bit. And for those of you in K-12, I want you to think about your current students, but if you're in higher ed, think about American or international students in general. Or if you do teacher ed, think about the students of the teachers that you work with. Any questions? This woman is already taking a photo. That is fantastic. Do you want me to be in the picture? Thank you. Oh, thanks. Thank you. There'll be other opportunities to do this as well. You'll be good. Okay, here we go. Everybody stand up. Yes. Okay. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to a minute. So there's no dilly-dallying, no like, hey, I saw you in Orlando, how you doing? No. Go to the side of the room that you believe is correct, okay? And I'm going to come around, and I'm going to ask a few folks to share as well. Here we go. Number 1, I am confident that 100% of students, when they are old enough, can get into college and or some form of higher education. Go. I just heard a few folks go, oh, come on. I'm going to go grab the mic, too. Okay, we have some dissent. Wow. Well, okay, I don't teach math anymore, but I do think that we seem to be skewing to one side. So let's do this. I want to get some impressions from folks that aren't of the popular majority. You guys, I'm going to come over to you in a second. Ma'am, what's your name?
Kaylin Pistoria.
Okay, where are you from?
Georgia.
What do you teach?
Special ed.
Okay, can you tell me, so you sort of agree, but not really?
Yeah, I think that at this point, most people can get in. Whether they're successful once they're in is a whole nother story. But I think they get in, and then we fail them at that point because we're so pushing to let them in.
I love what you just said because you are skipping way ahead of this, and that's fantastic. So I want you to keep that in your head because that's going to come up a little bit later. Okay, we're going to go back over to the unpopular opinion. Gentlemen?
I concur with everything you just said. I think there is a 100% chance that someone can get in if they're old enough. What happens next is the issue.
Okay, all right, hold that for a second. Now I'm going to come over to the pessimists in the room, or realists, depending on what you think. So let's go with, ma'am, you right here. Okay, can you tell me, why do you disagree?
I disagree because they may not want to go to college. There are other opportunities.
Okay, interesting. I want to unpack that more, but we'll come back to that. You, ma'am, can you tell me, Jennifer, why do you disagree?
I agree with that. There's a lot of other opportunities out there. So.
Okay. How many of you feel the same way, that there's other opportunities other than just higher ed? So that's not really what we should be focusing on. Okay. Oh, not the second part? Ma'am, you disagree. Come here. Come. I love dissent.
There are other opportunities, but that's not that we shouldn't be focusing on higher ed.
So tell me,
That's what you said.
that is true. Well, why do you think that 100% of students cannot do that statement?
Because they're not ready. And higher ed's not ready for them sometimes too, and don't meet their needs. So that's why they look for other opportunities.
Do you work in higher ed? Oh, she does. Okay, thank you. I thought that was going to be a different answer. Here we go. Okay, so most of us disagree with this. Now we're going to move into a slightly formatedly different question. Go to the next one, Sarah. And I want you to move depending on what you agree with. I am confident that 100% of students can get into college and complete the entirety of college and or some form of higher ed. Please switch. 100% of students. That's true. What did you say, sir? I did not write on time. That's a great point. Okay, so a little bit of movement again to this side. Raise your hand if you are on the 100% agree side over here. Okay, you, sir, who's probably going to make lots of friends after this. Okay, can you tell us, why do you agree with this statement?
Well, it just says about your current students, and I happen to be in a position in which I teach high school students that are interested in coding and development. Mm-hmm. So these are all really high potential students, and I'm just in a lucky position. I don't think in general, I would not agree, but since you say your current students, I have to be on this side.
Okay, and where are you from?
Germany.
Germany, all right, so we're all going to Germany because they have the answers, but that's important, I think. So it depends on maybe the type of students that you're working with. So let's go actually back here so that we've got sort of our middle ground. Ma'am, can you tell us, what's your name?
Barb Dukart.
Okay, Barb. Why are you sort of in the middle?
Well, there's so many people over there, I didn't want to run into them.
Okay.
That's really the honest truth.
Okay, so, so you're polite, which is wonderful. So you're more on the disagree side.
It depends on the student and the circumstances.
Okay, so you're like, what, 75% of the way?
Probably.
Okay,
yeah. So
it depends on the circumstances. All right, so voices of dissent over here. Someone, show of hands, who is like, I don't agree with this at all, this is a stupid thing? Okay, great. You put up your hand real high, real quick, so you know I'm coming to you. Okay, what's your name?
As the mother of a 4-year newly turned, stupid's not in the vocabulary.
Okay, great.
But I just think this is, it's not realistic right now. I mean, it's the the access. I don't think it's available to all students.
Okay.
So I think that's the issue, not what they want to do, or I think it's just an access. I mean,
so it's not about the student themselves, it's really about kind of the context around them, the systemic issues around them. Okay, hold that thought for a second, because we're going to go to the last one, which takes us outside of school and into the real world. I am confident that 100% of students will be able to get and retain a job or jobs with a livable wage for the entirety of their lives. Livable. I'm from San Francisco. This is the key. Livable. Okay, it seems like people mostly stayed, except we have a couple of folks who are like, I don't 100% disagree, but I'm kind of on that still mindset. Okay, sir, so you moved a little bit to the middle.
Yes.
So can you tell us why?
I think at one point we might move to a basic income in society with technology, so I'm somewhat confident that in the future that might happen.
Does everyone know what basic income means? Can you give a quick just summary of what basic income is?
Everyone will receive a certain stipend, no matter if they have a job or not, to pay for things that is necessary in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's the evil word socialism, but with technology, I think that is, technology and automation at some point that is attainable.
Okay. All right, so universal basic income. So that is something that is potential, and I believe there are some states that are doing it right now. Who 100% disagrees with this statement? Okay, you, sir, in the back with your hand raised. That one dude right there. I'm going to ask you to use your teacher voice. Can you tell us why? That's a great teacher voice. Who agrees with that? Yes. Thank you, sir. Thanks, Jake. Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, excellent. I would like everyone to go ahead, take a seat. Thank you for participating. You burned more calories than you would have been if you were seated, just so you know. I hear some murmurs. I know people are still kind of in this space. So this is interesting, right? There's something pretty fascinating about the trends that you saw in the room. Raise your hand if you were surprised and you ended up thinking, oh, this is going to go differently, like we're going to be more spread out. Raise your hand if you're like, yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, so we all know that these are the realities of where we're working right now. And yet, and this is going to sound redundant because I know you hear this all the time, schools and classrooms look the exact same in reality that they did when John Dewey first created them. Honestly. So if that's the case, what do we do? What do you do? Because all the people in here, at least I fundamentally believe, you're here because you want to change things up. You want to switch up the way the kids are learning. You want to support them in ways that are going to ensure that we all say, agree, agree, agree. So what do we do? Well, let's talk about the problem first, because getting the problem down to its brass tacks is, I think, the first step to figuring out how to address it. I'm going to throw a couple of facts and figures at you. For those of you who watched my TEDx talk, this isn't going to be anything new. You've seen this before. The International Pisa exam is an exam that 31 countries, 72 countries. 72 countries across the world take every 3 years. And in 2015, the United States of America performed 35th in math, 24th in reading, and 25th in science. But that's actually not what worries me. What worries me is this, that in 2017, CNBC reported that 65% of jobs that our kids will have don't yet exist. Again, probably not anything new, but we're preparing kids for jobs of the future that, at least for right now, we don't have a name or necessarily a knowledge of what those jobs are going to require. Does anybody recognize this gentleman up here? This is Dr. Michio Kaku. You may recognize him from the TurboTax commercials. He was in TurboTax commercials. He is a physicist, an American futurist, and he spoke at ISTE a couple years back. Who saw him speak? Anyone? He was pretty incredible, right? Terrifying, but incredible. And Dr. Michio Kaku essentially made the argument that automation, like that one gentleman said, is going to be severely changing the job markets of the future. Dr. Kaku specifically brought up the idea of trucking. So right now in America, trucking is the #1 job that Americans have when you look at like specific job markets. And they're starting to talk about the fact that robots can replace, and probably will replace, 1.7 million American truckers in the next decade. In fact, this is a little bit old at this point. It's already happening. Companies like Google are creating self-driving cars. And so what is that going to mean for all of the people in those jobs? It's not just trucking, though. Robots are going to come in and take jobs that can be automated. But this isn't really that new of a thing. Technology has always accelerated the ways in which humans learn and required us to adapt, which is one of the wonderful things about us as a species. I think Charles Darwin would say the same thing. Humans are adaptable, but how do we adapt? How do we progress from here? What do we do next? Sometimes I think when people meet me and they hear that I work at Google, they assume that I just want to turn all of our kids into computer scientists. I want them all to be coders. I want them all to be sitting at a computer just all day. But here's the thing, that's not what I want. Trust me. And it's not just because not everybody wants to be a coder, but it's also because I've learned working in the tech world in the Silicon Valley that there are actually 3 times more tech jobs for non-coders than for programmers. And I think this is an important thing for us to recognize because we don't necessarily need to force feed learning how to code down the throats of our students. Here's an example. So Break Into Tech, which is a wonderful website if you ever want to check it out, does studies every year where they look into trends in roles at large tech organizations. And in this particular case, I think they interviewed 10 different organizations, going from startup to large manufacturing organizations to places like Facebook. And what they found was 140,000 of those roles were technical in nature: information tech, engineering, operations, quality assurance. But when they looked at non-technical roles, 380,000 of those roles existed. That's more than double the amount of technical roles. We've got arts and design, finance, human resources, that's the department that I work in, education. Some of you could probably even get jobs in the tech world, though please stay where you are because you are all brilliant and we need you all in the places that you're in. And dear God, please don't ignore what I just said. Legal, real estate, consulting. There are so many jobs that are out there and will continue to be out there in non-technical capacities. So I don't want to suggest that we should push all of these technical skills upon our kids because that's what we think the future is going to be about. It's not. There is still a huge component to all of these non-technical roles that we need to be preparing kids for. Well, so how do we address it? We're going to talk about this a little bit together, but there is going to be a short activity that I want you to do later, which is going to help you think about how you're addressing it in your own scenarios. In the Code Next lab, we really try to push balancing the technical piece with the non-technical piece. It's not just about those hard skills. There's a lot of other things that come into play. And that's part of the big reason that we have these physical in-person labs where kids come in. It's not just about them learning online. It's about them being in the presence of one another. It's about having coaches that look like them, that have the skills that they can physically see. It's about them meeting each other, developing those bonds and those cohorts with one another that will last them a lifetime. Raise your hand if you're still friends with somebody that you met in high school. Raise your hand if you got a job at one point in your life through someone else, someone referred you. So these are the types of bonds that really do sustain us throughout our life. And at Code Next, we do like to break these, the different skill sets and things that we're doing with the kids down into 3 groups, which are hard skills, soft skills, and social capital. So let's talk through what each of those mean, and starting with the hard skills. This actually might make probably the most sense, just given that I think everybody in this room has a command of several hard skills because you sort of have to be able to exist in life. So accounting, finance, writing, math, legal, speaking a foreign language, computer programming, web design, typing, and other easily quantifiable skills. Those are basic skills that you do need to survive as a human in this world. Now at CodeNext, we choose to focus on computer programming and web design. And according to Fast Company in 2016, they do say that there are going to be a lot of jobs opening that require coding skills, and that programming jobs overall are growing 12% faster than market average. So that is something to be aware of. There are more computing jobs that are going to be and continue to come out. So at CodeNext, we like to do a little bit of balance of front end and back end. So front end is like the HTML, the way that things look, how to make it look pretty on the web. And then back end is the infrastructure behind all that. But that's only one small part of everything else. So let's talk about soft skill development. Who in here has seen that social emotional learning has become a lot more popular the last couple of years? A lot of us, right? Yeah, same. Social emotional learning has become one of those topics that I see a lot of times. In fact, I'm noticing a lot of it at the site conference. But what is the difference? Well, let's talk about this. So every year, the World Economic Forum puts out the Future of Work report, which I highly encourage you to read. If you haven't read it, it is a really wonderful piece of research and frankly, kind of a good wake-up call. What they noticed was when they looked at the top 10 skills that were requested by organizations in 2015, they then predicted what it would become in 2020. First of all, I want to call out a couple of things. For the first time, creativity pops up. That's pretty significant. Complex problem solving is still up at the top, though. And then also, what does number 6 say? Emotional intelligence. If I had a dime for every person I've met in the Silicon Valley who was brilliant on a computer but lacked any emotional intelligence, I could retire yesterday. And one of the reasons why that can be a problem, I asked you earlier about kids being able to get jobs and sustain them. Someone said this to me one time, and I thoroughly agree with it. Hard skills get you a job, they get you in the door, but then soft skills get you to the top. So part of the reason that we work with our kids to develop soft skills is because to succeed and progress in this working world, you do need soft skills to be able to collaborate, to understand where people are coming from, to negotiate. I love the fact that negotiation is still on the list. I wish that someone had taught me to negotiate when I was in school. Why did I not even know how to negotiate by the time I actually had my first job? That's a problem. And oftentimes when we're in the lab, the soft skill development comes from the different group work that the kids are doing, the way that they're interacting with each other, working on group projects, when they're meeting other people outside of the space, when Googlers come in and are working with them. All of those meetings, all of that group work, it's all about them developing those soft skills. But what about this last one, social capital? This is the phrase that when I usually put these PowerPoint slides up, people kind of look at me like, what is that? What is social capital? I would actually argue that social capital is probably the most important of the three of these, especially for the kids that I work with, because social capital is defined as the social relationships that have economic benefits. So earlier when I asked who had got a job because they knew someone who knew someone, that's what I'm talking about when I talk about social capital. It's the network of relationships that one possesses that enables them to do and progress through life. Here's an example of the system that represents my life. So all of the different communities that I've been a part of. So EdTech meetups, Google. I went to Northwestern for undergrad, went to Harvard for grad school, worked in the Catholic school system in LA, worked at KIPP in Houston, social media. Every single one of these networks on my social capital map has benefited me in ways that are unquantifiable and in ways that I couldn't have done myself at all, not even close. But it doesn't just necessarily come down to the professional communities. Like, my teachers have had a huge impact in my life, and I still talk to them today. The communities that I'm a part of, my friends, my classmates, my coaches and my mentors, my family, of which I want to call out today because they're actually here. Mom, Dad, where are you? Raise your hands. Yay. Where's my sister? Leah, stand up. Just stand up, just stand up. She asked me if she could wear yoga pants today. But she didn't wear yoga pants, even though Sarah Benson said that apparently some people do wear yoga pants to this thing. Is that right? Is anybody wearing yoga pants? No? Okay, maybe it's good that you wore jeans, thank you. So the fact that my family is here today supporting me, other than the fact that they want to take advantage of the free room that I got at Planet Hollywood, is the fact that I feel loved and supported by the people who know me the best. And this is a photo that we took at the Bellagio yesterday. My dad didn't say, let's do shots. I just put that up because I thought it was hilarious. This is my Instagram. But those communities have a huge impact on what we do. And I do want to say, I think we have a tendency to talk about students from marginalized backgrounds as lacking, but the reality is that they're not. They have all of these. It's just a matter of building on to the existing communities that they're a part of to make their social capital even stronger. And so that's part of the reason that we actually invite Googlers into the space, and each student in CodeNext and Tech Exchange gets a one-on-one Google mentor for the entirety of their program. So this, for example, is Uthman. He's an engineer, and this is one of our students in our Harlem lab. They come in. The kids are working on putting their resume together for summer internships. Uthman's working with him to make sure that it's perfected and the best possible way that a resume should look. But that's a relationship that I can't simulate. That's a relationship that only Uthman and that student can build, and one that will continue to follow that student, hopefully, for several years going forward. So what do? I've given you this information, but what happens now? Well, this is where I want you to come in for a moment, because what we're going to do is we're going to take a step back, and I want you to think about how in each of your communities, in your roles and your jobs, you are hitting upon hard skills, soft skills, and social capital, because I want to build this up for a second. So I'm going to ask for about 2 minutes that each of you, wherever you're sitting, thinks about either how you're currently helping students develop these things or where you've seen this happening well, if you work in teacher education. So I'm going to give you about 2 minutes, and I want you to physically write this down, or at the very least, if you don't have a writing utensil, just think about it. And give me one for each, because I'm going to come around and ask at least one example for hard skills, one for soft skills, and the clincher, one for social capital. Ready, and go. You can talk about it with each other, too, if you need inspiration. All right, here we go. Everybody, I need everyone's attention over here. I know you guys want to talk. I know you're planning your Tuesday night. We're going out for shots later. Got it. Got it. Okay, so hard skills, soft skills, social capital. I need one person to give me the best example of hard skill development I've ever heard. The best, and don't just tell me, I teach them to write. Great. Give me something more. One person, best example of hard skill development. We need to work on the confidence of this room. Yes. Can you introduce yourself as well?
I'm Roger Henson from Colorado Springs Academy, District 20 School District. One of the teachers in our district, he's a middle school teacher. He does Project Lead the Way in engineering work with the middle school kids, where they're learning the engineering skills by doing. Excellent.
Okay. So sort of like project-based learning, but the kids are learning hard skills in the midst of that. Very nice. Can we say Roger? Can we say thank you, Roger? Oh, you got a clap too. How nice. Okay. Shots tonight. Roger's buying everybody shots. Tequila? No? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, this is the non-tequila section over here. Okay. Not in Vegas. Soft skill development. Who can give me the ideal example of soft skill development? This one's fun. You can get creative with this. Okay, I'm coming over here, but this side of the room, you guys step up. Come on.
Hi everyone, my name's Elaine and I'm from Israel.
Okay.
And I think in teacher education, when the teachers themselves use the soft skills for teaching themselves throughout all the courses, then they're modeling how you'd like them to do in classroom afterwards.
Can you give us some examples of soft skills that you think teachers could employ to demonstrate to students?
For all of them, for example, a negotiation when you're teaching, you'd use that as one of the skills, critical thinking, reflection, all the things that you want them to do is put their activities as part of courses.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Can we give her a little round of applause, please? Thank you.
Yeah. I like that too because it really puts ownership on us as much as it does on the kids. I do think a lot of times, I'm sorry about that, we don't necessarily exercise what we want our kids to learn, you know? Which is, I mean, it's part of just being human. It's hard to be able to do all those things at once, but remember, you are setting the example for them as much as they are for each other. Okay, last and not least, social capital. Oh, okay, this side is so active, I love it. Yes, okay, ma'am, you over here. So tell me, what are you doing for social capital for your kids?
Should I introduce myself as well?
Yes.
Hi.
And
I'm
your
Lisa
phone number
Garrick.
and social security number.
I forgot about that. From Germany, Learning Lab, University of Duisburg-Essen. And what we do is we work with students, teachers, and people who work in school administration and in the municipalities. And we work in networks where they work together. And they, all work on their social capital.
When you say networks, what do you mean by networks?
They work together collaboratively. Networks as in they meet face-to-face and online. Not networks as in IT networks, but social networks.
Actually physically meeting people in person?
Yeah.
Okay. So can we give her a round of applause, please? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. So I love that because I also like that balance of blended and in person. I do think that it is good to have a little bit of the online and the offline. If you work in a predominantly online environment, that's fine. But that just means you have to get more creative about the ways in which you're helping to build these networks with students. Very nice. Give yourselves a little round of applause. You guys are great. And I also know it's early in the morning, so I always appreciate when people are like giving me a lot of energy. But let's talk now about how we then get as far away from this as possible, because this is terrifying. So I mentioned this earlier, and I think some of the examples that you guys brought up today are really helpful to inspire each other. A lot of the things that I'm talking about, those skills to develop to make our kids ready for when automation does render certain jobs unnecessary, you know, it really does come down to a lot of those soft skills and the social capital piece, because those things are transferable no matter what system you're in. So take problem solving, for example. There's a teacher that I met who is in Florida, Susan Bonas, who I think that her example of project-based learning to me in teaching problem solving is a great example of how to do this. So she is a teacher in Florida, and what she decided to do was to help her kids understand significant weather patterns by connecting them to some scientists at the University of Florida. There is a satellite that the University of Florida has that goes up into space and tracks weather patterns across the world. So her kids actually worked with the scientists to make conclusions about weather patterns using data from that satellite. And what I love about that example is that there's the hard skill development, for sure, using data, but then there's soft skills in terms of interacting with folks in a professional setting, and talk about social capital building, they're meeting people out in the field. And they're feeling that sense of pride and importance because they're working with real professionals. I did want to make sure that there were a couple of mentions of like cool free Google stuff in case you guys wanted it, but we have an applied digital skills training that's really all about teaching kids about some of these real world skills, the soft skill development, understanding how to research, write code, design a logo. You know, as much as I think we're preparing kids for the digital world, I also know that we were not raised necessarily in that space. So being able to give them the skills to survive in that space is crucial. Digital citizenship especially is huge. And I'll make sure, can I share these slides with everyone? I'll make sure to share these slides with all of you as well so you have access to all these resources, just so you know. What about self-regulation? So we mentioned social emotional learning earlier. Self-regulation is huge. Again, I see people in the Silicon Valley all the time that don't know how to self-regulate. It's crazy, but it's part of the reality. There's a great teacher that I know who teaches kindergarten in North Dakota, and what I love is that she has a self-assessment emoji exit ticket every single time kids leave her classroom. She's okay with the fact that they're kindergartners, but she says, okay, which of these emojis represents how you feel today? Do you feel like the constipated one? Do you feel like the one with the nice sunglasses on? Are you sort of somewhere in the middle? I love this because it brings social emotional learning down to the level of the kids that she's working with. To kind of push on the idea of digital citizenship, which I alluded to earlier, we have a whole system around this called Be Internet Awesome. It's essentially a free digital citizenship curriculum. And I'll tell you right now, if you're not teaching digital citizenship or you're not aware of what that means, you have to get on it. Because digital citizenship it's a non-negotiable at this point. Being able to conduct oneself and self-regulate in an online environment is a non-negotiable at this point. Twitter, Facebook, it's the world that we live in, and getting kids prepared for that is a huge part of it. But most importantly, and I'm going to leave you with this because I think application is honestly the key at the end of the day, and you as educators set the example for the kids, so helping them understand how their skills apply to the real world is really half the battle. If you look at the jobs on the right, these are the 4 most popular jobs in tech today: product management, data science, designer, software engineer. These jobs are huge. But when you say those roles to a kid, what is a product manager? What does it mean to be a data scientist? I don't know. But you can be the one that connects them to what those jobs entail. So say, for example, product management. Do you guys all know what product management is? Okay, so that's the other thing. Educating yourselves on what the roles are of today is a key piece, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. So product management is essentially leading the development of a product. If a kid's on student council, that kid is gaining the leadership skills that they can use to apply in a product management role. What about data scientists? For those kids that are huge fans of statistics or fantasy sports, they're working with data and science all the time. So thinking about applying that for a data science role is huge. What about that kid that loves art or design? They can be a designer. Heck yes, they can. And then what if someone's just a big fan of coding? Software engineer. Easy peasy Japanesey. So at this point, it's really kind of up to you guys to be the ones to bring them over to the realities of jobs today. And I should also mention, these jobs continue to increase in salary every single day. We're talking 6 figures in some cases. But I'm going to bring you back for a second to an example that I think is actually emblematic of what it takes in blending a student's interests to what they might want to do for a job outside of education. On the left, we have Brandon Knights. He's a Code Next student. He is in Chelsea. He lives in the Bronx with his mom, and he is a huge sneakerhead. Do you guys know what sneakerheads are? Kids who are obsessed with sneakers, sneaker culture. Oh yeah, they're super into it. Brandon is a huge sneakerhead. He came into the Code Next lab. He was interested in learning to code, but he also had this goal of eventually launching his own sneaker company. So what he ended up doing with the help of us, his mentor and his coaches, was he launched a website called Second Drops, where he's going out and buying really great sneakers and selling them for half price so his friends and other kids his age can buy them. But he used what he learned in the Code Next lab to program the website that he used for his product. And about 2 months ago, he was actually invited to formally present at SneakerCon in New York City, which is the largest sneakerhead convention in all of North America. Now keep in mind, I didn't go up to him and say, hey, You know what would be cool? Why don't you make this website? He came to us and he was talking about how much he loves sneakers and how he was loving coding, and he wanted to figure out how to blend his two loves. And a couple of coaches, we worked with him, and this is what came out of it. But that wasn't necessarily something that we could have done by ourselves or that he could have done by himself. We did it together. And that's what I hope for you, because you have all the tools to be able to help kids understand how they can apply their skills outside of the classroom. It's just a matter of thinking about it and implementing those tactics on a regular basis. And I also want to mention one more thing, because I think oftentimes when we think about technology and the jobs of the future and all the things that I've talked about today, there's this tendency to go, okay, but wait a minute. So mentors, technology, is there a need for teachers? And the answer to that is 100% absolutely yes. Because if I hearken it back to Dr. Michio Kaku for a second, the last thing that he said before he exited the ISTE stage was, one of the important things that teachers can impart to a student is to be a mentor. And here's the thing. I will never, ever, ever agree with the statement that teachers can be replaced, which I do here in the Silicon Valley sometimes, but I look at the people that say that and I'm like, no. No, 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 no. Because at the end of the day, you guys are the floor that the kids cannot fall beneath. You impart the wisdom, you give them the tools, but most importantly, you develop the relationship with them that will follow them for the rest of their life. So if there's anything I want you to take away from my talk this morning, it's that you are ultimately the human connection that really is going to matter most in the long run. I mean, even more so sometimes than their parents, just given the amount of time that you spend with them. So whatever happens as the year goes on, whatever happens in your careers moving forward, you are the most important thing in that child's life. And I hope you never, ever forget that. Now, unfortunately, I do have to stop the keynote for today. But I will be moving into, I guess, will we still be here? Or over there? Yeah? Okay. So here's the thing. I unfortunately have to hop on a flight at 12:30 because we're opening up a new Code Next lab in New York. So I'm flying to New York tonight. So if you have any questions, please come to the Q&A keynote from 10:15 to 11:15, because that'll be the one time that I have to be able to answer any questions or have conversations. However, I am very responsive on Twitter or Instagram. This is my email. Please, dear God, use it wisely. Don't send me 1,000 cat videos. Maybe just like 1 or 2. I do love cat videos. And then that's the Code Next website, if you're curious in learning more about the program or just soaking up some of the stuff that we've worked on. I really appreciate the time that you've given me today. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the site conference. Thank you.